and nasty show. Short and nasty show. Oh, that short and nasty show. That short and nasty show. Short and nasty little show. Oh, that short and nasty show. Short and nasty, yeah. It's so short and nasty, baby. It's so short and nasty.
Hello and welcome to the Short and Nasty Show. My name is Cameron Fielder. I hope everyone out there is having a good weekend. It is Saturday night, technically Sunday morning. And today I want to talk about a little Star Wars news that broke earlier this week. D&D have officially stepped away from Star Wars. They signed a brand new, very lucrative deal with Netflix to develop a show and maybe multiple shows. Not really sure on the details of that deal. But yeah, they stepped away from Star Wars. And no one really knows what it was that made them step away from Star Wars. No one really knows if they got fired or if they actually did quit on their own volition. And if they did quit, what was the catalyst for that departure? No one really knows. What we do know is that Star Wars, under Disney's control, has underperformed. Maybe not from a financial standpoint, although it's starting to. Solo underperformed, and I have a very strong inkling that this new movie that's coming out in December is also going to underperform. Rise of Skywalker, I think it's called. Anyway, don't go see that movie. Do not. I love Star Wars. When I grew up, Star Wars was my favorite movie. And the prequels had problems, but I also enjoyed the prequels when I was younger. And Force Awakens came out. It was okay. Obviously a rehash of A New Hope. It was okay. It wasn't. I still had a little bit of hope that Star Wars wouldn't be. But The Last Jedi completely crushed all those hopes. And so here we are, talking about good old Star Wars and the failure that it's turned into. And when you look at that failure and you compare that failure to the failure of Dan and Dave at the end there of Game of Thrones, Season 8, all of Season 8 was a mess. Season 7 was a mess too. But we kind of gave it a pass because we figured, well, they got to wrap up some of this stuff. They got to get the story to a point where Season 8 can succeed. And in hindsight, after Season 8, Season 7 looks even worse because what they were setting up was complete dog shit. But I digress. I'm not talking about Game of Thrones. Well, not directly. I'm talking about Dan and Dave. Dumb and Dumber, as some people have called him. I think I called him douchebag and dickhead or something. I don't know. D&D. So, when you think about it, Dan and Dave had a massive failure with the way they finished Game of Thrones. But Star Wars has also had massive failures. in the last couple of years, particularly. So, did Dan and Dave leave because they don't want to be a part of this garbage Star Wars? Perhaps. Or did Kathleen Kennedy dump their asses because she didn't want bad storytellers working for her? It's hard to say. One thing I do know is that Kathleen Kennedy doesn't really care about storytelling. So if anything, it's more about the perception that the public has towards Dan and Dave. We know she doesn't care about storytelling because she rewarded Rian Johnson with another trilogy after The Last Jedi. And from a storytelling standpoint, The Last Jedi is a very bad movie. Now, tons of people online have broken down what makes The Last Jedi a bad movie. I don't want to spend all my time explaining it to you. If you like The Last Jedi, that's unfortunate. That says something about your taste, probably. But comment down below if you did like it, and tell me why. It wasn't a very cohesive story, filled with logic flaws, filled with holes in the logic. The acting wasn't particularly good. Nothing was really happening. It was just bad. I can't think of anything that the movie did right. Well, I will say that the movie looked and sounded great. You can always count on Disney to produce something that looks and sounds great, right? But when it comes to the substance, when it comes to the writing, when it comes to the story, all of it's just corporate garbage. You know, they're more concerned with inserting their political agenda, their SJW agenda, than they are about telling a cohesive, fulfilling, fleshed out story. Now, Dan and Dave leaving, if I had to guess, I would say that these two idiots left because, well, two things. Because Netflix offered them the contract and it was worth a lot of money, and because Star Wars is very volatile at the moment. If you think about all the people Star Wars has already hired and then fired within a very short time span, would you feel comfortable working for that company? You know, I don't think so. Who did they have on Solo? Gareth Edwards? Replaced. Kicked out. Replaced by Ron Howard. Wasn't getting it done. The guys that, no, I think I'm sorry. Gareth Edwards did Rogue One. I'm sorry. I think it was Josh Trank and some other guy. Christopher Lord. Anyway, those two guys fired. The original writer, his last name's Arndt, the original writer for The Force Awakens, fired. Would you want to work for a lady that's just like hiring people on a whim and firing people on a whim? The volatility, and believe me, Kathleen Kennedy's days are numbered. Bob Iger's going to fire her ass just like she did all those other people. But the volatility, you know, you want something that you feel secure in, something that you feel like you're going to have some creative control in, and you're not going to be ousted the second you do something creatively that the producers disagree with. So if I had to guess, I would say that they left. I don't think Lucasfilm would have gotten rid of those guys just because of the poor ending for Star Wars. I think it's more likely that they got a good offer from Netflix. They know that Star Wars right now is starting to get a bad reputation. And they know that on the business end, you know, there's a lot of volatility. There's a lot of drama going on in Lucasfilm. I don't think I've ever seen a studio have this much drama with a movie series. As far as firing, rehiring, this, that, and the other thing. Right? So that would be my guess. But it's easy to see why someone would say, hey, man, did you see the way he finished Game of Thrones? That's fucking weak sauce, man. Like, what? Arya just killed the Night King like nothing was going on, and Dany just goes crazy in 2 episodes, even though there's not really they don't really set that up. You know, there's a couple little things, but they don't really set that up. We all know why Season 8 and Season 7 and even Season 6 to a degree of Game of Thrones failed. Well, it's because George R.R. Martin was no longer involved. George R.R. Martin was no longer able to help them in their storytelling. So we got bad stories. Now, I could totally see Kathleen Kennedy not liking that. I could totally see Kathleen Kennedy, you know, being a little worried. What have these guys really done? The one guy did, he wrote Wolverine, and the other guy, I guess, has written a bunch of stuff that just never got made. You know, so the only thing they've done, the one thing that catapulted both of them to the stratosphere of showrunners, of Hollywood producers / writer types, was adapting Game of Thrones. And the only good seasons of Game of Thrones were the seasons that could be adapted from books. When they ran out of books, it got bad. So maybe Kathleen is a little smarter than we thought, and maybe she did say, no. I don't want to gamble on these guys. Who knows? It's also possible that those two are just, they're their own men, you know. Kathleen Kennedy probably wants a Rian Johnson that she can control, you know. Soy boy Rian Johnson that's gonna write his movie with a bunch of feminists and basically say fuck you to 90% of Star Wars fans who are men. Now, if you're a female Star Wars fan, don't get me wrong. I know there are plenty of females out there. But don't try to fucking bullshit me and say that Star Wars is just as much for females. No, it isn't. It's action and adventure, buddy. Action and adventure have always been something for men. Way more men like Star Wars than women. And it's so annoying now that they act like, oh, the Force is female. Bitch, people my age grew up being Star Wars fans, and when girls found out you were Star Wars fans, they called you a nerd. Don't fucking bullshit me and act like, you know. That's ridiculous. Because they kind of like the movie, or because they don't mind them, you know, or because they like them, just, you know, just like anyone likes any random movie. That's not the same as how little boys, at least when I was a kid, how little boys treated Star Wars. We would fight with toy lightsabers outside for hours. Okay? Men aren't trying to steal My Little Pony away from you. So back the fuck off of our Star Wars. Alright? Fucking feminazis. Anyway. So yeah, Dan and Dave are out. As far as I know, Rian Johnson, that fucking soy boy, pathetic loser, is still going to make his own trilogy. And it's probably going to be the worst thing you've ever seen. And Kathleen Kennedy's still there. And all is not well in the Star Wars universe. Let me tell you, if I was Bob Iger, I'd fire all of them. But anyway, that's my take. I kind of ran and raved probably a little longer than I wanted to. Anyway, hope everyone has a good weekend, and peace.